M'Chigeeng is in the heart of Manitoulin Island. It is one of 6 communities on the island.
North Channel.
North
side,
Channel,
right?
Georgian Bay.
About halfway along.
Beautiful location.
It is beautiful, I'll grant you that. How many people are you responsible for?
We have a membership listing of approximately 2,600 people, and it fluctuates 2,700 people.
And what do you see as your mission as the chief of M'Chigeeng?
To listen to the people, to serve the people to the best of my abilities, from babies to elders, and especially for those who are on their way to coming. I feel that it's our communal sense, our traditional and cultural ways of taking care of our people. When we work together, I work with these beautiful women regularly in different capacities, and we work together for the betterment of our communities. We know what challenges we have, and we know what obstacles and barriers that we have to overcome. So through legislative processes and colonization over time, we've been divided by boundaries and barriers of our communities that my community is also part of, and that's the Anishinabek Nation.
Chief Linda, let's talk economy. 2,500 people in your part of the province. What do they do for a living?
We actually have a high unemployment rate. Our largest employer is the First Nation administration itself. We have a band-operated school, which employs a significant amount of individuals as well. The economy on Manitoulin Island is very poor. In earlier years, it was an economy based on tourism. Obviously, we're on an island and only have one bridge for access.
One bridge and one ferry.
24 hours or 12 months a year, and a ferry for 4 or 5 months a year. Mm-hmm. And with the economy in general, the Canadian and American economy, which used to drive the tourism on Manitoulin Island, has declined over the years. So we face, we're starting to face significant poverty levels. when we talk about economy, we have to look back at where we came from to where we are at today. History of my community was, our resources were, our economy was vast with fishing, making maple syrup, making sugar, some forestry.
Any of that still happen?
Very minimal, very minimal. Our land base is very small, so we don't have the land to do those economic ventures.
If things aren't working well in a particular community, they leave. They go somewhere else where there is work. And that's been a story of many people over the years. Mm-hmm. Because of your attachment to the land, that's not an option for you, right?
No.
So you got to make it work where you are.
That's right.
How tough is that to do?
It's tough. Our traditional territory is very large, but our community can't just pick up and go there. History tells us that Manitoulin Island was once to be a reserve for the Indians, the whole of Manitoulin. When the settlers came and found good farming land, good access to the Great Lakes, that's when Indian Affairs came in again, and the superintendent at the time signed a treaty with the First Nations. And the history of that treaty is that there was a huge miscommunication. My family is a signatory to that treaty, and our oral history tells us that what was communicated then on that paper was not communicated verbally. So you have two nations, one that is fluently Ojibwe-Odawa, Potawatomi dialect speaking Anishinabek to English speaking country. So our understanding was we will live in peaceful coexistence with each other, and you can come and live with us, but you cannot dig deeper than the depth of a plow. And in exchange of that, the Crown will ensure that you and your families for generations to come will be taken care of.
And I guess you're still waiting for that treaty to be made good on.
We're still waiting.
Still waiting. How many years?
You know, since the beginning of time, since the arrival, Steve.
Multiple generations.
Multiple
300 years. Something like that, eh?
Even more than that. When we look at the land base of Canada, particularly here in Ontario, my family history tells me that my family was involved from Lake Superior right down to Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. That's where they traveled. So
that's a lot.
It's huge.
Gotcha.
It takes more than just one person to make a world go round. You actually need a whole body of people to actually do things that you really want to do.
By going in the first time to KTI, I was just like mesmerized by the sheer beauty of it, because I walked into this place and I'm like, wow, this is a school. You walk in and you can smell the cedar, and it's just so beautiful in there.
The difference between going to school somewhere else off the island and the difference between going to school at Kenjgewin Teg is you get this really welcoming home feeling.
Just upon walking through the doors, you're greeted by the staff, you're greeted by the secretary, you're greeted by the instructors. They want to know who you are. It's more than warm, it's more than welcoming. It's a great experience to be accepted by those other than your own family members. They don't see you just coming in as another person who's curious. They want you to come in. They want you to pursue this education. They want you to be who you are, to become who you really want to be.
Anishinaabe prayers, I wondered always why there was praying before everything. And I thought, well, this is just, you know, trying to research the culture. And one of the women just said it was because of the life that the food and the resources give to us all, and we give thanks for that. So from now on, I'm always going to give thanks too, because it's something, even if you don't believe in a higher being, one should always be grateful for what one has.
Miigwech. I'm Leona Naugabo, a First Nation member of Whitefish River First Nation, and I work here at the Ojibway Culture Foundation. And my role here is an elder in residence as well as the language specialist. I do translations, I help with the different cultural activities that take place here. And the groups that come in, like today at lunch hour, are different people who work in other organizations who provide similar services like education and language, cultural, identifying how our people were and how they practiced. And these are some of the different organizations that are utilizing the services from the Ojibway Culture Foundation.
It was very refreshing and inspiring and humbling to be able to listen to teachings and to learn about the fact that there is such knowledge that exists already about water and about the human relationship with water, and how water plays such a huge role in our lives, in our existence.
Just very factually, I learned about the Omnibus Bill C-45 that 99% of our lakes and waterways are no longer protected, and I don't know why. And I'm gonna, from now on, I'm going to look into that and see why they're not being protected.
You have a bit of well, I guess, okay, this is a terrible question for me to ask, but you and I know each other a little bit, so I'm going to ask it already. How old are you?
I just turned 35.
Okay, so you're not only dealing with potentially issues around gender, but maybe around your relatively young age as well. 35 is a very young age to be the leader of anything. Any issues around either of those things?
At the beginning, I mean, in like my fellow colleagues here, I am the second elected female chief in my community. The first was former Chief Isadora Bebamwash, who still is a pillar in our community, and I look up to her very much as well. When I ran for this position, that was a question of the community. Is she old enough? Is she strong enough? Can she do this? Part of my own growing up and history is that I've always worked hard. I've always attempted to overachieve anything I've ever put my mind to. And I always made sure I fit in somewhere.
But you did get those questions, eh?
I did, and I do as well today. I get comments from federal government officials, I get comments from provincial government officials, but from just general people, they're pretty supportive. My community is also very supportive now. I feel that since I now have about a year and a half under my belt, prior to that, I was a counselor and I was very active. I was very vocal, and I continue to do so at within our provincial territorial meetings as well as the national meetings.
Do you find yourself having to act, for lack of a better word, kind of tougher in order to overcome whatever prejudices people may have about it?
I do have to assert myself to some degrees. Usually those are at initial meetings. After that, it's gone. after that is completely gone. And I observe a lot as well in my role. I feel that us as women leaders, I feel that we're challenged more. That's what I feel. I feel that we're challenged a lot more than a male, and I firmly believe that comes from the male-dominated political culture, and that's not hereditary or traditionally ours as Anishinaabe people. We all recognize that both male and female have roles in our communities. Women in our communities were always leaders. They're life givers. They did have decision-making skills. History tells us that it's the women who determined which men went to war. So we are the heart of our communities. We are the reasons why our communities exist in terms of life-giving bodies. So we do. I feel that my feeling for my community is I'm very protective of it, of all people, whether they live on reserve or off reserve. And I extend my hand to them. And I make myself available to people. I post my cell phone on Facebook. I put my cell phone everywhere.
Yeah, you're on Twitter a lot too.
I'm on Twitter, Facebook, all different forms of social media, and I try to stay connected that way. In my current role, the struggles I face is that I don't have an assistant. Unlike, if I make a comparison with provincial governments and my little government, I don't have an assistant. I receive a bi-weekly honorarium. I don't pay into EI, CPP, pension, nothing. So when we say we are gonna be true servants of the people, we are true servants of the people. It's not for me, it's not my benefit or gain. It's for theirs.
Understood.
Water is a very valuable gift of the Creator. It's something that we need in order for us to be able to survive as people. And we need to protect what's there for future generations. We talk about the 7 generations, and we need to protect whatever we can.
We know there are boil water advisories in many reserves all over the country. I don't know if it's the case in M'Chigeeng. Is it?
No, not in M'Chigeeng.
Not in M'Chigeeng. So you can drink the water in M'Chigeeng.
You can drink the water in M'Chigeeng.
Do you feel, though, that the government of Canada, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I just really want to understand your position. Do you believe the government of Canada does not make adequate progress on improving the water filtration systems on First Nations reserves all over this country in order to keep First Nations in crisis so they can have access to the resources?
I believe that First Nations are a financial exercise for the federal government.
Meaning what?
Meaning that significant investments need to be made. If we're just talking about water, significant investments need to be made on all First Nation when it comes to water. Currently, we fall under a national First Nations centralized or decentralized protocol system, which places Health Canada, the Government of Canada, and First Nations as the people who are responsible for the water. Now, our First Nations are bound by what government puts in their budget for us to adequately maintain and operate our water treatment plant systems. I'm currently working on an initiative with the Anishinabek Nation where our needs assessment has found that when compared to provincial standards, most of our First Nations would fall under a boil water advisory.
But my question is that happening because you think the government of Canada not only doesn't care, but wants to keep you in crisis purposefully?
Absolutely, absolutely. They have known for years what has been needed, and they continue to refuse to provide the adequate resourcing for the maintenance and ongoing operation of the system.
Professor Stewart, today in Canada, the government of Canada keeps First Nations in crisis in order to have unfettered access to their minerals.
Absolutely.
You believe that?
Yeah, 100%. It's power and control, conquer and divide. You know, you continue to allow First Nations to be oppressed, First Nations to which there was a fiduciary responsibility to by the federal government as representing the Crown. Now, we fail to look at in the gap that has been created over that amount of time, which has left our communities in crisis, missed opportunities, or having industry run over them. You know, you talk about impact benefit agreements. Well, in some communities, they say that the industry chose them, they didn't choose the industry, which causes me to believe that they had no choice. We actually saw a decrease in our enhanced water and wastewater funding last fiscal. In terms of the current projected budgets coming into the regions, they distribute them regionally.
Well, the money is flowing out, yeah. So where's it going into?
We've been asking the same thing. We've been asking the government, where has this money been flowing to? Where has it been being used?
Do you know? No.
No, and
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we've been asking the same thing. You know, and that's disheartening. I don't know where the money is going, if it's going to studies, but grassroots, First Nations on the ground, we're not seeing those increases. There are many First Nations and territories who are wanting to self-determine, who are wanting to get to that point of self-government. And you know, the starting off point is addressing those historic wrongs, the historic traumas. Without addressing the historic trauma, we can't expect a human being to actually want to move forward built on a history of distrust, hurt, and you know, basically raping our lands. So we need to create that relationship first. And I've read the works of both of yourselves, and I believe that, you know, when you combine that with the Anishinaabe view, you know, you do have a lot of good research, but it's very, very biased, very one-sided. And in our worldview, the Indigenous perspective, anything that we do to get us out of our poverty has to be First Nation led and First Nation driven, and not.
What's biased about their work?
It's very right wing. It doesn't talk about environment, land in the way we talk about environment and land, or honor, or truth, or humility. Any of those. It's very capitalist. It's very corporate, and it supports. Corporate Canada. It creates very good debates, and I think, you know, Ms. Widdowson and Mr. Flanagan have been shielded by the veil of academia to be able to continue pressing what they talk about within their work.
But is what they've said empirically provably false?
Yes, I believe so. When we talk about where First Nations have made significant progress, that's dependent on each First Nation. It depends on their geographical location, their access to urban settings, whatever their base economy is in that surrounding area. Manitoulin Island, for example, is heavily based on tourism, which increases or decreases depending on the economy, how much people can afford to visit. And you know, the bands in the Western First Nations, the report, Mr. Flanagan, that I think this successful First Nations. A lot of those Western bands have a significant amount of land base. You know, most of them weren't subject to treaties and are now in different final agreements, such as the Niska. Now, when we talk about the First Nation Lands Management Act and the First Nations Property Ownership Act, those pieces of legislation simulate what the Dawes Act did in the United States in the 1800s, where it creates an individualized ownership of land, which theoretically improved the economy or well-beings of the people, and that's similarly what the First Nations Lands Management Act and the First Nations Property Ownership Act is based on. And so that supports a completely Marxist attitude where it says, you know, we all must be equal, and in order to contribute to equally to the society. And then it creates different classes where the haves have and the have-nots have not. And all of this put together from this Western view supports the government by keeping our Indigenous people poor and capitalizing on our poverty.
All the talk about Aboriginal spiritualism and going back to traditions and all these aspects are not meaningful to the youth that are living in the communities today. They are told to do that by various consultants and lawyers, and this is part of the grievance mongering.
You don't think they feel it?
Well, I think they've been told that that's the way in which they're going to be able to live the life in the world today, and many people that I know actually pretend that they think that this is a beneficial way for people to live.
Okay, response over here.
Yeah, I don't think you have a right to talk about First Nations wellness. You know, that has to come from the communities.
I'm here to
I'm
give my
talking
opinion
right now. So, I was a youth who attempted suicide 3 times. How did I come out of it? Was my understanding who I was as an Indigenous person, as a woman, and I listened to my elders and I participate in ceremonies. Even as of today, I don't rely on the healthcare system of Canada. You know, I rely on the teachings of the cultural practices and medicines that I have learned from my grandmother. So when you talk about the suicide and what's best for our youth, identity is what we need for our youth. Identity is what's going to empower them and make them strong. I'm 35 years old, and if I didn't find that in my early 20s, I would have been dead. If I waited for Canada to help me, I would have been dead. But when I turned to my elders, to my community, to my friends and my family, and asked for help, that's what got me out of it. So I disagree with you saying that going back doesn't do any justice. What we're trying to do is reclaim our identity and to allow our youth and our children to get that opportunity that I never had when I was young. So they're just getting that now. You know, and that's preserving our language, our culture, and our identity that ensure that we are a unique and diverse people of this country. We are the original people.